In the Hebrew Scriptures, the wilderness is not just a place. The wilderness is a character in the story, a signal about what is about to happen next, and a metaphor for living the Christian life, the faithful life. Holy Scripture portrays the wilderness as the opposite of anywhere that anyone would want to be. The wilderness is radically other. It is barren and uninhabitable. There's not enough water. The wilderness is outside the protection of the community and outside what we will come to call the Promised Land. The wilderness is the home of bandits and unclean people and those whose communities do not want to have them around. The wilderness is where you are sent into exile. It's where you run when someone is trying to kill you. It's where you go when society says that there is no other place for you to be. Yet the most curious thing happens when God's people go into the wilderness. They consistently meet God there before they leave. The wilderness is the last place that anyone would expect to find God. Yet the wilderness is one of God's favorite places to show up. God showed up for Hagar in the wilderness when Abraham threw her and her son out of his house. God showed up for Moses in the wilderness when he was a fugitive on the lam. God showed up for Elijah and Elisha in the wilderness when it was time for a new prophetic word. And of course, God showed up for the Israelites in the wilderness on their 40-year journey from slavery into freedom. When God's people go into the wilderness, God shows up. This morning's reading from the Hebrew Scripture recounts a familiar story. Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 maids, and his 11 children and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream, and likewise everything he had. And Jacob was left alone. The Jabbok River is an east bank tributary of the Jordan River, located in the modern-day Kingdom of Jordan. To be at the ford of the Jabbok is to be outside of Canaan, outside of what we will later come to call the Promised Land. Jacob is in the wilderness. True to form, Jacob has not gone into the wilderness by choice. Jacob's brother Esau feels wronged by Jacob, and Jacob has learned that Esau wants to settle the score. Esau has gathered a gang of 400 men, and they are coming for Jacob. In anticipation of a fight, Jacob divides his household into 2 groups and sends them in different directions in the hope that some of them might survive. Jacob himself goes into the wilderness. Jacob chooses the exposure and vulnerability of the wilderness over the clear and present danger of home. And there, in the wilderness, Jacob is alone. Alone and exposed, seeking safety in the place where no one would expect him to find it. Half a verse later, however, Jacob has company. Half a verse later, Jacob has a fight. But it is neither the person nor the fight that Jacob was expecting. Scripture says, "A man wrestled with Jacob until daybreak. And when the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he struck him on the hip socket and put Jacob's hip out of joint." Scripture does not tell us who this man is or where he comes from, but he's certainly special. Jacob wrestles with the man all night, and is injured as a result. But Jacob will not let the fight end until the unnamed man gives Jacob his blessing. Think about that for just a moment. Jacob has fought all night, and Jacob keeps fighting until his opponent offers him a blessing. Jacob is not looking for a total knockout. Jacob does not insist on hearing words of humiliation and defeat. No, Jacob wants this man's blessing. And he ends up getting even more than that. The man says, "You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. For you have striven with God and with humans, and you have prevailed." This is no bandit. This man is not from Esau's army. When a biblical character gives something a name, she or he is asserting authority over it and taking responsibility for it. Adam named the animals because the animals were in Adam's care. God renamed Abraham and Sarah because Abraham and Sarah were in God's care. And here in the wilderness, at the end of a night-long fight, this mysterious man gives Jacob that which the narrator does not give to him: a name. One of my closest friends has asked me to promise that I will preach his funeral, and this lesson is among the texts that he has chosen for the day. He says there is no better way to summarize the life of faith than this: you have striven with God and with humans, and you have prevailed. Faithful living is not easy. Many days, the teachings of our faith and the expectations of our neighbors are in tension with one another. Many days, that which we understand God to want for us is in tension with what we want for ourselves. Jacob knew these tensions well, and today's story gives us a window into his soul. Jacob is not like those biblical characters who set aside everything at a single word from God. Jacob struggles. Jacob struggles with Esau and with Laban. Jacob struggles with jealousy and with wealth. And in today's story, Jacob struggles even with God. The metaphor of a wrestling match is a perfect capstone for Jacob's story and a good model of faith for us. The mark of a faithful life is not the absence of struggle, but our willingness to keep struggling. To keep struggling with faith and desire, with vocation and direction, with our need to be in control and our abject fear of losing control. The mark of a faithful life is not the absence of struggle, but our refusal to quit wrestling, our commitment to keep getting up off the mat. This familiar story from the Hebrew Scriptures models two important principles for living our lives in faith. First, when you find yourself in the wilderness, look for God. And second, when you find yourself wrestling with God, don't give up. Wrestling with God changed Jacob's life forever, and it will change ours too.